You know that person, the one who's always the life of the party, just buzzing with energy and these incredible, brilliant ideas? But maybe they also leave a little bit of chaos in their wake? Well, today we're diving deep into a really fascinating and honestly pretty elusive personality type that might feel surprisingly familiar to a lot of you. In this quote from Pablo Neruda, wow, it just perfectly captures that hidden conflict we're about to get into. This idea of an ambiguous malady, a secret grief hiding behind a mask of nonstop happiness. It really sets the stage for everything we're about to explore with the hypomanic personality. And right there, that's the central puzzle, isn't it? How can one person be so incredibly gifted, so successful, so charismatic, and at the exact same time be unreliable, superficial, and even kind of reckless? That's the paradox we're going to try and unpack today. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about this charismatic paradox. What does this person actually look and feel like in the real world? So who is this person really? Well, you've probably met them. They're often that workaholic friend, just tireless and so ambitious. They're bursting with big ideas and have this sunny, magnetic personality that just pulls you in. But if you look a little closer, you might notice that their relationships, which seem so intense at first, feel like they're missing real warmth. And underneath all that incredible success, there's often what psychiatrists call a nagging sense of aimlessness. What's so wild is that this isn't some new idea. Not at all. Clinicians have been observing and trying to put a name to this exact pattern of behavior for more than 100 years, long before it became a hot topic in modern psychology. Seriously, the journey to figure this out goes way back. Back in 1921, the legendary psychiatrist Emil Kraepelin called it the manic temperament. Then, fast forward to the 1950s, Kurt Schneider was talking about hyperthymic personalities, people who seem cheerful but are also hasty and unreliable. And even more recently, research into what's called the soft bipolar spectrum keeps highlighting this same exact mix of amazing leadership skills and, well, deeply problematic recklessness. And just listen to this quote from Kraepelin himself. From all the way back in 1921, it just nails it. It perfectly captures that feeling of being totally impressed and at the same time deeply unsettled. You see the brilliance, you see the wealth of ideas, but then you get hit with that uncomfortable state of surprise from their restlessness and, complete lack of reliability. So how on earth do we make sense of all these contradictions? Well, psychoanalytic theory gives us a really powerful way to think about it. The idea of a divided self. What we see on the surface, that's the overt self, is basically a mask for a completely different reality hiding underneath, the covert self. And the key psychological tool that makes this all possible is something called splitting. Basically, it's a defense mechanism where your brain sorts everything into extreme black or white categories, all good or all bad. It makes it almost impossible to see the shades of gray, the nuances in people or even in yourself. For the hypomanic personality, this is absolutely fundamental to how they operate. Okay, so let's break down how this split actually works. Overtly, on the outside, their self-concept is huge. It's grand. It's overconfident. They seem cheerful, like they don't have a problem in the world. But covertly, what's hidden? A ton of self-doubt, a deep restlessness, and a profound fear of being alone. And that cheerfulness, it can flip to pure rage in a split second if you dare to contradict them. Now, what about their relationships? Well, on the surface, they're super social. They seem to create these intense, intimate bonds almost instantly, and they'll put new people on a pedestal. But the covert reality is pretty stark. There's an inability to feel true empathy, a habit of losing interest in people just as fast as they found them, and sometimes even a hidden contempt for the very people they seem to admire so much. And this split, it bleeds into every part of their life, especially their social and ethical behavior. Overtly, what we all see is the driven, successful workaholic who gets things done. But covertly, that success is often built on a foundation of really questionable financial judgment, a total disregard for social boundaries, and what clinicians call a corruptible conscience, which makes them prone to lying and manipulation to keep that successful image afloat. So it's really important to get this. This isn't just a random checklist of traits. It's a very coherent, very complex psychological defense system, one that usually starts taking shape very, very early in life. Yeah, from a psychoanalytic view, this entire high-energy, go-getter persona is what's called a manic defense. Think of it as an incredibly elaborate, unconscious strategy that's been built up over a whole lifetime, all to keep unbearable feelings like loss, guilt, and dependency at bay. Theories from developmental psychology actually give us a pretty compelling origin story for this. It all goes back to toddlerhood. Step 1. A toddler learns to walk and explore and feels this amazing sense of magical power, of omnipotence. But then comes step 2. The painful crash when the child realizes they're a separate person from their mother. That feeling of shared power is gone. So the theory goes, the hypomanic style is basically a lifelong defensive return to step 1, a clinging to that early feeling of elation to avoid ever feeling the pain of separation again.
So, you'd think that a condition that has been so clearly recognized for over 100 years would have a solid place in modern psychiatry, right? Well, you'd be wrong. It has a surprisingly controversial status. So, where does it actually fit?
And this is where things get really confusing. The two biggest psychiatric manuals in the entire world actually disagree. The DSM, which is the main guide in the US, thought about including chronic hypomanic disorder, but in the end, they decided it wasn't well enough established. But the ICD, which is used by pretty much the rest of the world, does include it as its own distinct personality disorder. This disagreement basically leaves it as an orphan disorder. It's a condition that doctors have been clearly seeing and describing for generations, but it still can't find an official home in our modern classification systems, which, of course, just adds to how elusive and misunderstood it is. And all of this leaves us with a really critical question to think about. In our culture, a culture that rewards ambition, high energy, and a sunny disposition, where exactly do we draw the line? Where does a driven personality end, and a complex psychological condition that causes real harm, both to the person and everyone around them, begin?